Hello. In this brief video, I'm going to show you how to submit your paper in a Turnitin Dropbox, and then I'll show you how to read and interpret the Turnitin report that's generated after you submit. So first, find the appropriate Turnitin Dropbox. They're easy to spot because, as you'll notice, the icon for the Dropbox is a little different than a general Turnitin assignment. So these down here are your general Moodle, if you will, assignments, the icons. And then here's the icon for Turnitin. So this is actually Turnitin's icon. So you'll notice that it's a little different. So you click on that to enter it, just like you would any other assignment. And then it takes you into the submission system. So notice that these are all blank, right? So we're going to submit a paper now, and these will all be filled in after we submit. So here it says submit paper, and next to that is a little icon for a cloud with an upload button. So click on that, and then it does require that you title your paper. So I'm just going to call it Susan Sample. If I can type here, sorry. And then direct your computer to where that paper is. So click there, click choose file, and then I'm going to select Susan Sample for Turnitin. Okay, now click upload this file right there. So the first step that it's doing right now, it's actually uploading the paper to the Moodle system. So this takes a couple seconds because these papers are usually kind of long and the files are a little large. So this takes a few seconds. It will propagate here in a minute. And there we go. Now, once it's uploaded, don't make the mistake of just saying, okay, I'm done, and then pressing close. You don't want to do that because we actually haven't uploaded it to Turnitin. It's uploaded right now, kind of interim, if you will, to Moodle, but now we need to tell Moodle to send it over to Turnitin. So to do that, you click on this button here which says Add Submission. So this is the second step where Moodle is interacting with Turnitin and is taking the paper that you just uploaded to Moodle and sending it to the Turnitin system. That didn't take too long. Here you go. Here's the paper. Now this is your digital receipt. This tells you that your paper, your submission, has now been successfully uploaded to Turnitin. So now this is just like a little snapshot of your paper. Now you can click close. Once we do that, now you'll see something a little different down here. So here's your digital receipt that we were just viewing. I named it Susan Sample, so that's the title that we called it in the beginning. Each paper is given a unique Turnitin ID, which is right there. And then it also timestamps it. So it'll tell you exactly what day and time that it was submitted. Now notice one thing, this in the US, this kind of confuses us because we see 8/7/18, so we think, okay, August 7th, 2018, but it's not the case. They use a different system where the month actually comes in the middle here. So the day comes first, then the month and the year. So it's actually the 8th of July, 2018 at 4:26 p.m. So that's when I uploaded the paper. So notice this is your important thing to look at right here. So there's a little bar, it says pending right there, and it's grayed out. So this is the Turnitin Originality report that you're going to need to look for in a few minutes. Turnitin does say it can take anywhere from 0 to 24 hours for it to actually filter through their systems and generate that report. Typically, I don't see it take that long. I generally see reports as soon as 15, 20 minutes or so, maybe an hour. But they do say that 24 hours is their average turnaround time. But again, I've never seen it take that long. So what we're going to do now is we're going to pause the video and come back and wait for this to actually generate and come back, and then I'll tell you how to view the report and how to interpret it. So stay tuned. Okay, now we're back. So generating that report took about 2 to 3 minutes long. So although, again, they say 24 hours, it doesn't usually take that long, and this took about 3 minutes. So let's see what you get. You'll notice that there's actually a colored bar here with a number. So a very common question that I get as a professor is, oh, what's the number I should be looking for, and what number should I avoid for the similarity report? That actually isn't an easy question to answer, and I tell students I'm not going to answer that question because you can have two students with the exact same number, but one could be, for example, this one's 15, which is green. So you think, okay, in a red light, green light system that we're used to, green means good. That's fine, right? In most cases, that is okay, right? 15% is probably going to be okay. However, in other cases, 15% is not going to be okay because that 15% could be solely from other published work. So the real answer to that question is where is that 15% coming from? So you'll hear a lot of professors out there say that, oh, anything below 20% is fine, and I think even up to 25% the bar is still green. I think after 25% it goes to yellow. It stays yellow for a little while. It goes to orange, and then anywhere between 75% and 90, of course, is red. But hey, I'm in the green. I'm 15%. I'm fine, right? Well, that's actually not the case, and let me show you why that is. This paper is a perfect example of that because it's green, it's 15, it's low, and you think we're totally fine, but we're not. So here, when you click on that green bar, it takes you to the Turnitin feedback studio is what they call it. It's kind of like an integration for Moodle. So let me do that again. So um, you click on that 15% or the bar, the similarity report. Click that. It'll automatically bring up a new window for the feedback studio. Now, this is your paper. If you scroll through the paper, you'll notice that there are lots of sections in the paper that are highlighted. I just went past one here a second ago. Hang on. There's some parts of the paper that are highlighted, and you might be wondering, well, what the heck does this highlighting mean? Well, let me see if I can help you out. So remember I said to you before that it's important to find out where that 15% is coming from, right? Well, these highlighted sections are numbered, and each number goes with an accompanying source. And that 15% is a culmination of all these sources put together. So you'll notice that there's 15 right here, right? This is your 15%. So there's 15% of this paper that is not from this student's writing. It's actually from other sources. So go ahead and click on that number, and it'll bring up your match overview. This is important because you're really going to want to go through this with a fine-tooth comb and find out where my 15% is coming from, all right? So it lists the sources that are essentially not original, right? It lists them in in order so that the most concerning are on top, and then the least concerning kind of are below that. So the most concerning number one is 3% of this paper is actually not the student's writing. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the one. So click on I just clicked on one right here, put my cursor there, clicked on it, and it brings up this box here. This is an important side-by-side or pop-up, if you will, because what this is actually, this little box is actually a pop-up from this source. So this student has a website that they used called educationg.org. That's a weird name. But here's the website, and this whole sentence is actually not the student's writing. So from the word the all the way to the word the down here, so 3 lines of this text are not the student's writing at all. It's actually essentially lifted from a source, okay? Now, notice one more thing. I'm gonna click out of this. It's kind of in the way of me wanting to show you something. So I'm gonna click out of that and just put my cursor here and then click there. Okay, so This is another common error that students sometimes make, is they might take the source, like the student did, word for word, and say, "Oh well, it's okay because I cited it with an in-text citation right here, so it's totally okay for me to do that, and I'm fine." But that actually isn't the case. The only way that you can take something word for word uh, is if it's in quotation marks or it's noted as a quotation. So note here, this is not in quotation marks. It's not noted as a quote. And incidentally, quotations are typically not permitted in the educational research classes anyway. So it's another reason why this wouldn't be allowed. But let me just restate the main point here. Just citing this with an in-text citation after this stuff is taken word for word does not, I repeat, does not make it okay. It is still plagiarism. Okay? So this is a very long line of text, over 4 lines of text in the student's paper, is taken from this website. Now, if it's a website, it's really easy to do. All you need to do is click on that URL, and it actually takes you to the website. And you can see, if you are an instructor or a student, doesn't matter, you can see exactly where the student got this from. So they were probably searching something to do with disruptive behaviors in the classroom, found this website, thought this was written really well, and just decided to use it in their paper. And thought, okay, well, if I cite it with an in-text citation, that covers me and I'm fine. But again, that's not the case. Okay, so moving forward, you'll notice that, let me click out of that again. You'll notice that this is got a 1, superscript 1, and it's all highlighted in that same color, right? This also is superscript 1 and highlighted in that same color. So these two sentences are from that same source. How do I know that? I'm going to go back over here and click on 1. Takes you to this. We already know that this part of the paper is plagiarized, right? But if I click on this forward arrow, what is it going to do? It's going to take me to the next part of this paper that is using this source word for word, which is obviously right down here. So this sentence is taken again from that same source and tells you where in that source, right? And click on forward arrow again, and it'll just go through the paper and it'll show you where those trouble spots are, okay? Keep clicking. So I guess there's 3 parts of this paper, because we're right back to that same page that we were on before. The 3 parts of that paper. The third part is on this page 6 here. But I wanted to also show you one more example here of what not to do, what to look for. So this is actually a whole entire paragraph the student took. And notice this one's a real trouble spot, because not only is it an entire paragraph, but there's no in-text citation following the sentences. So in this case, the student made no attempt to actually cite the source and is actually using this writing as their own. So this one is a huge, huge red flag that says that the student really, really made a mistake here and plagiarized. Another thing that students do sometimes, though, is they'll use the source and they'll throw in or change a couple of words here or there. For example, notice that this is all plagiarized except for this one word. So sometimes students will change a word here or there and think, well, that's okay too, but it's not. So what I like to tell people is sometimes you might get a very, a common term like disruptive classroom behavior, right? That's 3 words there, and that's a very common thing. You might see that in some writing, and that might come up because maybe a paper got published that used that term. Well, that's not fair to say. You're not allowed to say disruptive classroom behavior, right? That's not, that's totally fine for you to use that term. But look for sentence fragments that are 5 to 6 words in length or longer. So in this case, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So this is obviously way longer than my rule of thumb, 5 words or longer for a sentence fragment that's plagiarized. So if you have a segment that is 3 or 4 words long, I wouldn't worry about that too much because it's probably going to be like a common term or a common thing that people write. But in this case, it's way over that. It's almost 3 times that amount. So this is not a good thing, and this is going to be plagiarism. And of course, this one is because it's basically an entire paragraph there. So we can click through. I'm going to click through to find my second source. And here's a better example of what I was just talking about here, where the student threw in some of their own words. For example, initially, maybe the authors of that source used a different word than initially. Maybe they use relationship instead of correlation, and so forth. But notice, sensory integration theory that's 4 words. I'm going to go ahead and say that's okay. First of all, sensory integration theory is a term, and it kind of goes together, and it's not fair for us to say, oh, you can't say that. It's fine. This one's fine. However, this one points to a problem. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I would say this one's a trouble area that needs to be changed. This one up here too, I missed this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This is another trouble area that needs to be changed, okay? And let me reiterate again. Just changing a word or two like "and the process," "and here," that doesn't make it okay. That doesn't break things up, right? Because notice there's plagiarism here, there's plagiarism here, and there's plagiarism here. So that taken together points to me that there's a sentence there the student really didn't write on their own and really did take it from another source. Let's click through and see maybe another couple of examples here. All right, you see some more cases of it there. Let me see another one. And oops, let me go back to that. So here's another example of a problem area, the paired sample t-test. So if this ended there and just said paired sample t-test, that would be fine. However, the student followed up with this phrase here as well, sometimes called a dependent statement. So they should have worded this on their own, but the student didn't. All right, so you can kind of go through all of these and see in your paper where they're coming from and whatnot. So let me show you a spot that might come up that is completely acceptable. So in this case, I'm going to scroll down to source 9 and see if this gives me an example of, oh, these are some more trouble areas. So maybe that wasn't a good example. Let me scroll down lower so you have an idea of some areas where it might be okay. Okay, I might be better off to actually scrolling down to. So if you find some highlighted areas that show up in your reference page, sometimes it does pick up some of the reference page. So when I create these assignments, there's some settings that are able to be checked, and one of the settings is check the references. And sometimes if I don't click that box, it does a really good job. Like this particular case, it didn't check the references at all. In other cases, I leave that box unchecked, and it still does check the references. So in this particular case, it didn't. So it looks like this student has a lot of work to do in terms of correcting the plagiarism in the paper, because it looks like all throughout the paper, all the way down past page 20, the student has used sentences or even whole paragraphs that are not their own. So that's actually really not a good thing at all. So one quick other option to show you is if you click on that button, you remember I told you sometimes you can see that side by side with a little pop-up box. This, if you click on that, it actually, that button I just showed you a second ago, it brings up that other source as kind of a side by side here. So it makes it a little easier to see the whole or more of the source, if you will, like right here, rather than just that little pop-up window. So you can click on that again if you would like to see a little more of that. So let me show you that again. So click on the source, and then click on this. It's supposed to be a side-by-side comparison. So you see how it says full source view? So click on that button, and it shows you the entire source, the text anyway. and it even highlights what text was actually taken. So all this in red here was taken to make up the stuff here that shows up in the paper. So it makes it sometimes a little easier to spot, because if I go back to that website, for example, let me go back to the website. If you go back to the website, yeah, I mean, it's nice to see the website, but you would have to actually go through this yourself as a student or the instructor to find out where was it on the website that this was taken from. Whereas if you do it as a side by side, it shows you a little easier format. It shows you exactly where, what paragraph it was taken, and how much of it was taken. So anyway, that's two ways you can see some trouble areas in your paper, okay? So just some things to look at, and some things to look for when you're looking at your report. So to recap, asking your instructor, your professor, hey, what's a good number to look for is really not a good question. And the really discerning professor will say, I'm sorry, I can't answer that question because it really depends on where that 15% or where that number is coming from. You can have a number as low as 10%, very much in the green, if you will, in the green being this bar here. And it's still being plagiarism because 10% of the paper, is made up of writing that isn't their own. So in this particular case, this was a perfect example of that. Below 20, it's green, you think it's fine, but it really isn't, okay? So go through your report and look for those trouble spots, if there are any, and fix them. Again, the rule of thumb is if you use a sentence fragment that's longer than 3 or 4 words, you probably have a problem, all right? Anything longer than 4 words probably should be fixed, all right? And the other point is, remember, just citing it with an in-text citation at the end of a sentence does not make it okay. Nor does it make it okay just to say, oh, well, I'm just going to put the quotation mark here and there and say, well, it's a quote. Because guess what? In educational research, quotations are not permitted. So that's also not okay. Okay? So if you have any questions, do ask me or your instructor, and we'll be more than happy to help you with this. Bye now.